Yo, what is up? We're live. I didn't realize what's going on. What's up, man? Hope everyone's doing well. We're gonna rip power hour here. I'm gonna rip like 30, 40 minutes maybe. I welcome questions. We can talk about stuff. See what's going on. We'll do some breakdown, some educational aspects. Running some logs from earlier on. This is what we were just chatting with the team about on NASDAQ, right? NASDAQ holding out pretty well back into the major balance low that we had around that 130 area, right? That 130, 140 balance low region here on the NQ. The expectations for the day were to see if we can actually come back into that price to catch the bid and see if we can go back up into that 300. So this is my third trade of the day. I was trying to sell 300 on the retest as we moved back into the balance low earlier on in the day, but got stopped out on a head fake and I just couldn't get in again, which kind of sucked. But yeah, whatever. Anyways, let's see if we can run the continuation of these. What's up, Ulrich? Robbie? Welcome back from the morning session. The overall direction and movement of the market has been bearish, right? Even today has been bearish despite yesterday's end of day rally. One of the key factors that really helped bring that out was the idea of, where is it? The idea of these balances. So you have this balance here from about 300, 310 all the way down to 135, 130. And you have this developing balance 335 up to 520, two balances. You have this little dinky spot in the middle, right, that has a 20, 30 point difference. This area, this like low volume node area, splits up the two major distributions. So realistically, it's still bearish as long as we maintain outside of the acceptance of the higher balance. So as long as we're under 335 realistically, there's still the potential for that bearish move. And the thought process was come back down into this balance low where the volume drops off for the week, where yesterday's value area low was as well, right? And see if we can actually hold that bid. So we waited all day for 130 area. It trades long 129, and let's see if we can move above the general targets. Honestly, like 300 into end of day. I got 3 left, trying to hold this out. Big negative delta 250 area. If we can move through that 250, 270, I think 300 makes sense. A lot of people calling bear trap over the last few days. I like the vision, honestly. So let's see how this thing shapes up. But let's see, you guys got some questions. Looking at ES today, can I run from 9:30 to 10 a.m.? ES pump from the open from edges of balance, retest back down. You see absorption. What was your thoughts about the? What was your thoughts about it? It was one touch, second test, balance edge 63.80. Okay, so good questions. Let's take a look at the SPOOs. Overall, I don't really trade in the first 30 minutes. So that's just time to observe. I can just see where that SPOOs is. Oh shit. And take a look at the SPOOs balances here quickly in the movement. Whip this chart out because it's been very nice. It reflects a lot of the absorption and exhaustion in the market from an order flow perspective. So S&P, right, I had a little bearish lead on the SPOOs today as well. The idea behind that was you do accept into a balance. Where is this? You do accept into a balance area higher on the overnight and on yesterday, right? That 63, 92, 93 area is around that balance low, so we're just rotating around it with heavy volume on the overnight. Once prices started moving back under that, right, to start things off on the opening print, you can see it over here, right? This is the open, this dotted white line over here. So this dotted white line represents the open. You come down, and where are you? You're under that balance low area. So if you're under the balance low around that 95 area on the SPOOs, theoretically you have bear side pressure. You get absorption into the tops, multiple rotations between 93 and 95, which I would look at as a bearish move. Like I said, I don't really trade the first 30 minutes, so like by the time I was getting ready and understanding what was going on, the market was trading like here somewhere. So these guys get mega turbo giga absorbed at 75. So realistically, if prices come back down to that area, you see where this distribution extreme really sticks out. That's realistically a spot where you might want to consider all this giga absorption as an area to look for the longs, right? Even on this most recent pullback. But all this absorption that was taking place into these highs under that balance low is bearish. Because once you move through a balance low and you leave the general larger balance, there's momentum for the bear side to try to take over. These guys that got super giga absorbed over here, I'd like to see prices back into that area. You see they start getting absorbed at that 75. They undercut the area by a bit, right? 70, 68 was a key point for us, and now we're trying to run higher. They're getting absorbed again. Realistically, we're still testing the bottom band of that balance, 93, 95. There is potential that these guys try to roll things over. That's what I'm concerned with the NASDAQ as well. I think they're both at important spots where the sellers, if they're real, they're going to try to come out, right? NASDAQ, that sell side, the sellers don't want to let NASDAQ above 240 realistically. The sellers on S&P, they don't want to let S&P above 95. They're absorbing a lot right now, and some people are looking at this for the potential short realistically. Like, Robbie, I have a balance extreme on S&P around 72-ish area, but yeah, that 80 had a lot of absorption this morning. As I'm looking at this, you have positive delta here on the NASDAQ, right? I'm still bullish. I want to see if we can expand this to the upside, but there is a point right now where it's looking a bit frothy for S&P specifically. Yeah, like the shorts, like into this delta area, in and around 240, I think, would make a little more sense for that seller to try and come out. You have a monster, you have like some pretty heavy sellers that came out at 215. They're still trying to hold bid. If the sellers come out, in my opinion at least, it's probably going to be somewhere around like 95-ish S&P, 240-ish NASDAQ. Like I have another TP at 230. This negative delta, that's like a main concern for me. Like you have 240, 250. This spot right here, this is where I would expect a struggle. So if I was going to trade the first hour, retest at 10 a.m. on SPOOs, look like a test just reviewing the day. Yeah, that huge piece of like absorption that happened on SPOOs into those lows in that morning, like I think that was a solid spot to look for the reversal. Honestly, the way I was looking at SPOOs in the morning as well as NASDAQ was selling 93 on SPOOs, selling 95 on SPOOs since we were below that auction area. And you had a bunch of people buying into the highs that were getting trapped. Passive selling over and over and over and over again. Um, these guys are failing again. Oh, decisions. I think what I'm gonna do is take another one off on these SPOOs, or NASDAQ, and leave these stops over here. Still another take profit at 230. Realistically, like, you can see these stops, these red lines here, they're under the negative delta. If anything, if we pull back, we try to hold it. But I do like the upside momentum. There's absorption, but there's not like too much selling into these highs. Hey Andrew, what's up? I like the idea to short SPOOs is solid, like NASDAQ 220 maybe. It's still under these areas. I really don't want to just like reverse it though. I think I'm just gonna let this thing run out. If it can hold above that negative delta, above like 180 on NASDAQ, great. Then we can maybe explore higher prices. But right now they're getting kind of absorbed. There's some re-offers that are trying to come through. Just not enough sell pressure from the highs for me to be like, oh, let me just flatten this completely and then F off. You have heaviness of volume that's accumulated around this 210. That's why, like, I think a good short setup on this would be something like bid 230, 240, head fake, re-offer, heaviness of sell side, then pull it back down into lows. Otherwise, I think, yeah, like I think if you're shorting these tops, you're probably gonna have a decent little move. But the potential of it, I think, is like 180 NAS, 170 NAS. SPOO's probably closer. There's a lot of buying that was left behind on the way up on SPOO's at like 84, even this like 87. I don't think you get much out of it, but yes, something. The hell do you draw on this thing? Yeah, it's gonna be a mess. My point is, it makes sense if they head fake it before. This is a pretty cool chart. Thanks to Chris, I got it from him. Like you can see a bit of the reason why I was looking at these spoos as a bit of a tough continuation higher. They get pretty absorbed and they actually start rotating back below that 93, where you could see a bit of a pull lower, maybe towards that like 83. And if this NAS takes me out, it takes me out. I'm so trash at reversing. Like NASDAQ got pretty stuck at 220 as well. I like to take my time. This has been like a semi-boring day, honestly. There has been movement. There's been a lot of swings, but it takes a long time to shape up. Like these rotations in the middle of these regions, in the middle of nowhere here, like once we offered under this 230, 220, rotations here, I wanted to see if we can get a little pop up to 220, 230 to sell into. It didn't really happen. From here, it was like 1140, 1145, all the way to about like 110. We just got sideways movement, sideways rotations into nothing, realistically. So these guys, for an hour and a half, stayed within the balances, didn't do anything. And then quick spike that takes about 5 minutes to come down into the key area. You have about a minute to decide what you want to do at those lows, and then now we're into that rotationary period again. And you can see, like, on the daily profile, you have kind of like a double distribution of heaviness of volume building out. The low volume drop off is like around that 170, as well as this negative delta, so I like it for the idea to hold the support structure so that we can sustain these bids. But you'd have to start breaking through this little middle finger over here, this mid-balance area, volume kind of ledge node, whatever, with the heavy volume drop off from the current session, right, which would be above that 220. I think, honestly, if they're going to sell, it would make more sense if they pop, re-offer, hold back under these guys, and then start selling. But I do like the upside. I think we've seen a pretty nice bottom for the session here. Yeah, I'm gonna add the what's it called? The trans music in the background. And get something that's not copywritten. Just subtle little and like a singer in the background too. The Gerbian, what's up, man? A lot of fake crypto trader YouTuber. And their streams. Yeah, maybe I should add a little lo-fi or something in the background. Because there's going to be a lot of dead air, right? Especially when the market's like moving like this. You don't really have... It's not like fast-paced entertainment And I could only string words together for so long. And so if you have questions, if you want me to go through stuff while this thing shapes up, that's great. But the second we got on, things just stopped moving. You get like a few scalps, right? We faded from that 220 down into like 190-ish, fair enough, while we were talking here. Like when I'm in a trade, obviously I'm looking for criteria that would qualify me continuing on with the trade, but also for criteria that would disqualify that, right? Being like target areas. Once it's like this deep in profit, I'm kind of okay with seeing how it goes. But like stop placement, target placement, right? Those are all factors that I do want to consider. So like, if I weren't in this trade, what would I want to do at this point, right? I'd kind of be interested to see what happens closer to 230 on a head fake failure from there, if they want to continue some of this downside move, because you have like a lot of positive delta that's taking place into that point that's trying to hold these guys out. You have volume profile that's agreeing with that sentiment. You got a head fake. What I like about the bulls, you got a head fake under the initial balance low. You come into the key auction area. Mildly rude. What's up? I need to add that background music right now. My bias, Milan, my bias right now, my daily bias, my general bias, how I go through bias. Which one out of all those? My bias right now is bullish from the auction low. I like all day today, since the morning, we've been talking about selling 300 and buying 140. 300 head faked me and I couldn't get in again. I tried, but I couldn't. So I made sure I bought this low. But the idea was to get a higher low from yesterday, still holding within the balance, so we can see an attempted bid into the end of the day. I use this stream time to learn how to beatbox. That might have been the extent of some of the sell side pressure. Let me change the screen here quickly into this footprint chart. This is the S&P. S&P into these lows, right? It didn't look like anything crazy until this big buyer came out. I think that was kind of the nail in the coffin, that massive buyer that rebid prices around that like 76. These guys held out pretty well, and we started the rotation back up from there. The thing is, right, when you leave behind all this positive delta on the way up, like this, it's active support for the continuation of the move, right? So all these guys are holding support structure over here at 86. There's no one really selling into the highs, right? There are some people that look a bit trapped, but no one's aggressively selling, so I don't look at this as like the best of shorts. You have on the way up, right, after this monster positive delta comes up on NAS and it starts to hold the buy side, you had this initial seller that held out on that rotation around like 218. Okay, it pulls down. What happens down here, right? This passive buying on the negative delta rebids prices pretty aggressively, right? Back into that 215 now. So if we can start moving through that to the upside, we have the continuation of that potential. Otherwise, like this whole area, like I was looking at 230, 240, maybe you head fake above and then you offer. But if these guys with the negative delta actually hold prices down, you're going to want to see these guys break to get a better confirmation that the downside opens up. So like this right now is just adding more and more volume for that buy to see if we can flush to the upside if we keep holding above it. We offer aggressively, they keep selling into that negative delta. That's where you'd probably want to pinpoint that turning point to look for some of that sell side pressure. But my current bias is to the upside. Let's go back to the other chart. My current bias is to the upside since we've held the balance low. My only problem with that is if I want to continue this bias, there's two ways to kind of look at it. Like right now, they're trying to hold against that 220. But if I want to continue the bullish bias, this area around 180 would have to hold a higher low. More importantly, we'd have to run through that 230, 240. I say there's no one aggressively selling, but isn't it already too late if there are people aggressively selling? Not necessarily. Because once you see people aggressively selling into the market, you still have an opportunity to get in. Like, it doesn't mean that in a split second the thing's going to drop like 40 points. It could be a continuous sell, you know? Like, more of a passive sell, if you will. It's still kind of aggressive, but, like, it takes a little more time to shape up. You could easily go back down to revisit these lows. I think if they do want to do that, it's going to be from these mid 200s, like 230, 240. Right now, like, there's a lot of buy pressure that's holding these guys up. So I want to remain with this long. Like the case for, I do see the case for the short. I feel like I could be looking for something of the sort if I wasn't long. But if you're going to short, it's going to be from here somewhere, right? 220s, 230. Looking for that downside because you have this exaggerated volume profile ledge. You have the current session balance volume top. The way I see things for the day is we tested the balance top at 300, 320, which is what we were looking for, to test the balance bottom at 130, right? 130, 140. We test the balance bottom. Now we're up at 210, 215. From that balance bottom, I like the idea to continue the momentum back towards that 300 to wrap up the day. Obviously, I could be wrong, but based on the current information, I think we've accumulated enough buy side, right? Getting a lot of people trapped on the short and trying to rebid these areas. I think if you want to be short, you're going to want to be short from these areas here. Because if you let like 240, 250 go, you're probably going to see at 300. You have good support. Like on the way up, these buyers have left traces around that 190. You have this negative delta over here. Obviously, you see these guys that are trying to absorb into these tops as well. But it just got super slow. Ba, 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 ba. What model is my mini PC? Yeah, I got that today. I'm still, after this, I'm gonna continue. I'm gonna finish setting it up, but it's from Geekcom actually. They make mini PCs. Let me see exactly which one it was. I don't really have any feedback on it because I haven't used it, but I'm hoping it's pretty solid. Oh my god. Trying to find what the hell it was called. It's an IT something. Geekcom IT. What were the other figures? It might be an IT-15. Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know what it is. I think it's IT 15 or 13 or something from Geekcom, but it's pretty powerful. It's got 64 gigs of RAM and 2 terabytes SSD, i9 Intel processor, so I think it should do the job for everything I'm trying to do here. Stream, have Sierra running properly, open multiple Sierras, right? I think that'd be cool. Hey Sahaj, how's it going? Yeah, I don't think like the idea of the sell is terrible here, right? Like you're still under on ES, you're under the auction low, under those like mid 90s. Realistically, you have a big buy support at 84. If you're shorting like 93 down to 84, I think it's a pretty good move. Like NASDAQ, if you're looking for the short, you should be trying to short into those 220s to see if we can roll under that 190, see that 180. Right, you get 30, 40 points out of the move. I think it's fine. The long trade down into these lows is the bottom of a major balance, right? This is a 100-day profile here on the right, this gray. Or it might be 400. It doesn't matter. They're all kind of the same. But you have this major balance low. You can see from this white box, the major balance low is approximately 135 if you want to be a little more exact. And the idea was the fact that we moved back into that balance yesterday, right? And we haven't tested the balance low yet. The first test of the area makes sense. So if I can find that buyer at that balance low, which happened to be at 129, right? I think that I could have had a nice move into that 220, which right took place. I'm at the majority. I'm only long two, right? I don't mind if I get taken out on the rest of these runners. It's totally fine. You have a midpoint area at this 220, 230, which is this short that we've been talking about that Robbie was taking. Yeah, that's a good one, right? Like you're under that on S&P under that 93, 94. It's worth a shot to see 83, 84, right? That's where they'd expect to hold out a bit better. Is the same thing into this NASDAQ, right? As long as NASDAQ holds 180, I don't mind staying in this long because you have that big negative delta block here, right? These guys want to hold the sustained bid to see if we can push through that 230. And if I'm wrong, it comes back to the rest of these trailing stops, and it is what it is. Well done. That's a good day, Robbie. That is a good day. This chart over here. Oh shit. 1 second. This chart over here, right? For anyone asking, I think 11 message in Discord. Like, this is delta based, right? The chart itself is based on number of trades. So this is on Nasdaq. I use 750. And then you get colorations of absorption that happens based on the order flow, right? Based on delta predominantly. So when you start getting like pink, you're starting to get a little more absorption and even exhaustion into these lows where you expect a turning point. The same with the blue. They're great for reversals, right? It shows you where people are getting trapped realistically, where there's passive selling into highs, passive buying into lows. They're very good for reversals, right? Where I see pullbacks and where that trend can stop. So for instance, over here, right in that 220, there was some cause for concern. I use it with my key extreme, so if I have a balance area around 230, obviously if these guys start stalling out at 220, it's something that you want to consider. This is that fat seller I was talking about earlier, Ulrich, where you even had a chance to sell into it realistically. I don't, like, I'm obviously not trying to flip on the short here. You can get like 30-ish points out of these moves, but I still like the idea for the longs after we tested the balance low. Generally, when you test the balance low, this late into the end of the day, right, there's a pretty high chance we can start that revival. Right, balance top to balance low, at least get to like 250. This computer makes absolutely no noise, this little one. Well, it's tiny. It's like, it's smaller than my hand. This is what I like about this. This is what I want to see. We come down, negative delta, right? Bid, back to 215. Let's see what happens. There's a bunch of flow at that 215 area from most recently. What does the S&P do? S&P trades as low as 82, tags that 84, 83, positive delta, rebids now trading 92. This should allow for some clearance higher, ideally. Robbie, what range? Like the current little micro rotations that it's shaping up? Like, I like to look at the market from a bigger perspective in terms of the balances that we're setting up at. Because once we get this move back below these like low 90s, right? You move below the low 90s, that's acceptance into an area of low volume where the downside trend would want to continue. So you get this like huge sell-off, they come back into the low 90s, they rotate, they test the key bottom, they pull back, they get stuck, okay, they rotate back down. As long as we stay with under these low areas, right, there's potential for the sell side pressure. These guys accumulated a little too much down here on the red side of things, which is allowing some of this bid. But realistically, as long as we're under 93, I'm not extremely bullish. You're below a balance area where these guys are expected to try to short back down into these 70s, right? Just because I'm long on NASDAQ from the lows, I said I wasn't going to double dip and get along the spoos. This is more of a fade from an important area to see if we can get the expansion higher, but all in all, it's still overall bearish structure under these balances. So they haven't given it up yet. A lot of these rotations like this, with a failure to actually continue lower significantly, leads me to believe that there is a little more push to the upside swing. That's why I still like the longs. You know, they have their chance. They get absorbed, they reoffer from 93 down to 84, rebid from that huge buyer that started this move higher. At this point, like, so many tests of this area are leading me to believe that we are looking for an expansion higher. Nas trying to trade 220 now. But yeah, it was kind of slow, kind of wonky. I still like the idea of the buy side as long as we hold these areas and try to bid a little higher. I think these rotations over here that we were showing you guys on the order flow front are holding pretty well. Now I just got to see the expansion into this higher region on both S&P and NASDAQ. So I'll leave you with that. I think it was a pretty solid little move here that we've had. I still like the upside. End of day rally, that's kind of what I'm looking for here. We've held negative delta, that's why my stops are under it. That's the area that we need to hold bid. If we can move above 240, 250, I think it opens up the upside momentum into that 300. So I'll leave you guys with that. Remember, check out community.tradeproacademy.com. Tomorrow, Jerome Powell is speaking at 10 a.m., the Jackson Hole Symposium. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. We'll do another Power Hour next week on Monday. Remember, we're going to start our week off with our weekly analysis, and we'll go from there. Thanks, guys. Thank you for the questions. I appreciate the back and forth, and we'll chat soon. Oh, sorry, I missed it. With a 4K cash account, how many MQ contracts would you recommend? Probably 4 max, right? I would say like 1,000 to 1,500 per micro lot, 7 figures. That's kind of a go-to I would look at. And with that being said, if you guys have any other questions, or maybe I might have missed some of this stuff that you have asked, you know where to find me at community.tradeproacademy.com.